Okay, go ahead, Tina.
Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes. So, hi everyone. My name is Tina Titarescu. I know you all know Ken. Ken and I have connected maybe 6 months ago, and because we have a lot in common. I spent the first half of my career in sales performance optimization, and I'm trained as a behavior scientist. And this topic around the keys to performance is something I've spent a lot of time in my career on, as has Ken. So we're super excited. This is the second in 7 workshops, I think, Ken. The first one was last month, and it was an overview to the 6 keys. And this time we're focused on key number 1, which represents 80% of the leverage, and that's on expectations, accountabilities, and feedback. You guys will see a QR code in the left-hand side of the screen. That is for a tool called Menti, and it allows us to make this interactive and to get your feedback along the way. It's very easy to use and fun. So if you have your phone, you can go ahead and use your camera to scan that QR code. And then when the first question comes up, you'll see it on your phone and you can easily respond. Hi, Gerald.
Hey.
Did you miss the part about the QR code?
Just picked it up.
Okay. So everyone can go ahead and scan the QR code, and that will open Menti on your phone. And then once everyone's set, I'll proceed. Okay. So we're going to spend about just a few minutes introducing ourselves to each other. And then we're going to just give a recap for those of you who didn't attend the first workshop about the 6 keys. And then Ken is going to talk about 3 topics related to this, to key 1, setting expectations, giving feedback, and accountability. Then we'll spend just a few minutes talking about the next several workshops that we have planned, and then a closeout, 1 key takeaway, 1 thing you like, wish, or wonder, another topic you would like to learn about, and next steps. So the first question should be on your phone. And if you don't have it and you miss the QR code, you can just go to menti.com and use the code that's at the top of the screen. You can just quickly enter your name and your business specialty or industry, and it'll pop up on the screen. Well, we have 3 people that have responded with very, very different businesses. Anyone else? So we have Denise and Peter from Awnings and Shades. We have Tom, who's marketing, sales and marketing. Lori, wholesale seafood. Bob is B2B marketing for manufacturing. Anyone else?
I think that's most of them, actually. I know Gerald has a streaming TV program, business, right, Gerald?
Yeah, I actually stepped out of a production meeting because I saw the webinar was about to begin.
Oh.
So kind of just a fly on the wall for right now, but I wanted to hear as much as I could.
Okay.
All right.
So just quickly, I kind of already introduced myself. I own a performance consulting firm called Talent Edge Advisors, and I work with small, fast growth companies to build the performance culture and talent they need to scale. And as I mentioned, I'm a behavior scientist by training. Ken, you want to quickly introduce yourself, or everyone knows Ken, so.
Right. Everybody knows who I am. I have a company called Our Sales Coach, and I work with business owners and select salespeople, sales managers, and I help them make sure they're getting the right kinds of clients and growing on a continuous basis through training and coaching. Okay, go ahead, Gina.
Thank you, Ken. So this, so just to set the stage for these workshops again, these 6 keys are based on a model that was developed by Thomas Gilbert. And Ken actually ordered this book that was published in the late 70s. It was my textbook in graduate school, and read the whole thing. And he has like 150 earmarked pages because
they're all dog-eared.
Yeah, dog-eared. There's so much information here that applies to organizations, teams, and even societies about getting top performance. But the quote that is really applicable, and I just want you, if you can remember one thing from today, is if your goal is to improve performance in any setting with any person, or is 80% of it can be achieved by setting clear expectations and letting them know how they did. So, right. All the things that we do, and I know we did actually pose this question last time, and people said that they spent a lot of time and money and resources on training, on systems, on incentives, on other things. And not to say that those are not important and those are not part of the puzzle, but 80% of the leverage to improve performance is just based on being very clear about expectations and making sure they know how they did on a timely basis. So I just want to pause for a second to ask people, is that surprising to you? Is that different than how you do things? And why is this so hard if 80% can be achieved by doing this?
I have a couple comments on this, because the first question is, how do you define performance? Because everybody measures results, right? So that's the first key piece, is results. Okay, are you getting revenue? Are you gaining market share? Those aren't the same measures of performance, right? Yeah. Are you beating your competition? That's another measure of performance. But those are outcomes. Sometimes we can't always control outcomes, but then there's customer results. Do you measure, okay, customer retention, or you're growing within your existing customers? I mean, I do a lot with manufacturers, where a lot of what they do is just try to keep the growing with their existing customers and retain those customers. Or is it the activities that the salespeople are doing? How good are they at doing activities? Are their product or service performance, or do you have hunters, do you have farmers? How good are they at those individual aspects of sales? Yeah. Or is it your salespeople? Do you have the right attitude? Do they have the right skills? Do they, are they turning over a lot? Or are they effective? Okay. And, the effectiveness is really kind of what we're talking about here today, is, what's your strategy, and what's the structure of your sales team? What roles are they filling, and what are the activities that they need to do, and how good are they at achieving those activities? So all that comes in after you've really defined what performance means, so that you can determine, right? Do you have the right territorial design? Are you recruiting the right people? Are you managing them properly? Do they have the information they need?
Yeah.
Are they compensated the right way? And are your goals that you set the ones that are appropriate for the particular strategy that you've designed and the activities that you've determined they need to do? And you know, then you can manage the performance. So
Yeah, Ken, you're kind of, you're talking about so many things, but I think and we're going to get into that here, but I think the key thing you said is performance can be ambiguous. Like and it can be subjective, and people can have different definitions of performance and what high performance means in to them and to their organization. And that's where I think the biggest problems occur is I can think I'm doing amazing. I can think I'm a hit it out of the park performer, but my manager thinks I'm mediocre. Why is there a difference? And the difference is what Ken just said, that if you're not extremely specific about what you mean, what good looks like, or what high performance looks like, and how you're measuring it, then people can interpret that in any way they want. And also they could be giving feedback in a multitude of ways as well. So the first step is defining what high performance looks like in your organization and how you're measuring it. So this slide is just, Thomas Gilbert calls this the performance engineering model. But for the ease of use, we have kind of renamed it the 6 keys to performance. And I just want to go over this so you understand that all of these things are in a system, meaning they relate to each other. If you make changes in key number 1, then it affects all the other keys. And if you do, if you have clear expectations, for example, if you say, we're gonna increase our market share from 28% to 50% in the next 6 months, and you're giving very clear feedback on a weekly basis how you're doing against market share, but you haven't changed any of the other keys, meaning the tools and resources are not supporting people to increase market share. The incentives are incenting something else. They're incenting like volume sales versus volume sales to to existing customers. So selling more to the existing customers instead of market share, or they're focused on margins instead of market share, you're going to get something else. If you don't train people on what are the factors affecting market share, what are the other competitors doing to get market share, what's the gap between where we are and where we want to be, and what things do we need to be doing differently? If you don't train, if you don't, select the right people who are motivated by that, then you're going to unlikely achieve it. Ken, do you have another example that you want to kind of tie into this?
I think I have some as we go along. So if you want to just skip to the next slide, if you're done with this. Go.
So the only thing else I want to say, again, these are in order. So keys 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they're in order of leverage, meaning key number 1, remember, is 80% of performance is about key number 1. Key number 2 is the second strongest key, or you have the second most leverage with key number 2. Key number 3 is the third most leverage. Key number 4 is the fourth, and so on. So each key as you go up in number has less leverage. So if you focus all of your performance improvement on key number 4, on training, for example, and you don't do the right things in the other keys, the training's not going to have a big ROI. The last thing I'll say about this before we move on is a lot of people when they have, or a lot of organizations when they have performance issues or people are not meeting expectations, they will think it's an employee problem. And they'll think, I just need to get, this isn't the right employee and he or she's lazy, not motivated. I need to change the employee. But most of the factors affecting performance are under the control of the organization. So if you don't have a system to support high performance, meaning you've set up key number 1, key number 2, key number 3, you have great expectations and feedback that are very clear, the systems, tools, and resources support efficient completion of expectation, and the incentives are aligned with expectations, then it doesn't matter what employee you have, you're not going to get optimal performance.
Yeah, and
Any
this is
questions?
this is really typical and by the way, I want to say this applies to any part of the organization. It doesn't matter what the employee is doing. It's not necessarily just specific to sales, but it's just typical that in sales, they have people that just didn't work out, and for whatever reason, and typically they don't always know exactly why, but they usually just figure, hey, it's key 5. I got the wrong person. Okay, well, maybe you did. But if you didn't really set them up the right way with the right expectations, you're not giving them the right feedback, and they don't have the information, you're not gathering the information to give them the feedback, or they don't have the right, database or information or tools or resources, then how do you know? Okay, maybe it is compensation, but money's not everything. And so this is the real main point here, that if key 1 and key 2 isn't set up, you really never will know. Did you get the right person, or did you not set them up the right way? Okay, and that's the key here.
Yeah, and if you just throw money at people and it's not linked to your expectations, then they'll be super happy they got a raise or a bonus, but they'll forget about that in like a week, and it's not going to drive the performance that you're expecting. Any questions or comments or any other experiences people have had that relate to this they want to share? Okay, I'm going to go on, Ken.
Yeah.
So we have a Menti question that you can answer on your phone. What percentage of your sales team consistently meets expectations? So is everyone done? It's a pretty typical bell curve, right, Ken? That you have like a bottom performer, you have a top performer, and then half of your people are in the middle. In this case, it moved a little bit, but only one of you has someone who's consistently like a top performer, meeting or exceeding expectations. The next question are, what are your expectations? There's no wrong answer. We're just interested in this. So Ken can kind of customize what he says about this, but what are your expectations of your sales team based upon? And it could be, you know, quotas, it could be the business goals. Are there some other responses that you've seen?
Well, yeah, it could be, well, I'm gonna get into that more, but you know, how much business you're getting from existing customers, customer retention rates, and meetings, number of meetings set, meetings executed, close rates.
Anyone else have anything here? Or I'm gonna go to the next slide so we can keep moving. And the last question here is a multiple option. So how frequently can your salespeople get an update on how they are performing against expectations and the incentives? Can they know like real time as often as they want, like how they're doing against quota and, you know, what incentives they're going to get paid out? Or is it weekly, monthly, quarterly, biannually? So does this track with what you see? I mean, obviously, ideally it's real time, but you know, very few organizations have the systems to do it real time, but weekly is pretty frequent, and that's really good.
Yeah, so real time. So I guess the real question is, are you giving them feedback, or do they have access to it? And do they have, because when I think of real time, I think that they have access, and then salespeople, you know, not everyone pays attention to that. And there's different reasons for that. But you know, I definitely do believe that, you know, salespeople should be receiving some weekly feedback, and then adjustments are made monthly, because quarterly and annually is just too late. You know, you can't wait till the end of the quarter to make adjustments, and so
And
this
that
is
and
critically
this
important.
is the same. This is the same thing regarding not just salespeople, but any people at your organization. The more frequently you can give them feedback in real time, the better it's going to be to improve performance. Like, for example, if they're working on their presentation skills and you see them present, like right after the presentation, ideally you could say, you know, great job, Rich. These are two things that I thought you did excellent. And here's one thing that, you know, is an opportunity to continue to strengthen. It's a delta, not to say it was poor, but this is one thing that I think you could continue to strengthen. And then that's going to work a lot better than waiting until his biannual review and giving him that feedback.
Yeah, and that's a positive encounter.
Yeah.
Not waiting till, if you wait till the you know, the quarterly, then usually it's like, hey, here's where we're behind, and it's not necessarily as the opportunity to really spin it in a positive you know, approach. But
So Ken, this is you're going to talk about some tools.
yeah. So, you know, we talked in general. I mean, I threw out a lot of examples of really what expectations be based on. But the first thing that I ask any prospective customer before you know, when I first meet them, before we decide if we're going to do business, it's like, okay, what are your goals? And, you know, it's not uncommon. So in fact, sometimes they don't really have goals set. But, you know, it's typically, well, you know, last year we grew at 10%, so we're I don't know, the economy is uncertain. Maybe we're expecting 5%, or, we'd like to do 10% again. Okay. Well, what's the science in that? I mean, that's just a number. And it's not based on anything. And it certainly is not based on your market potential, because that's what sales is based on. What is your market potential? And, so, just to make it more specific, you could say, look, we have this many of these types of customers. If we get 5 more of them, that's how much business we would bring in. That is even a much more specific, realistic goal that you can figure out, okay, what's the formula for us to achieve that? Okay. And we're all here small businesses. We don't have the wherewithal to go hire Gartner to do a market research study of all the, what is the total market capacity for what we do. Okay. But, if you were going to engage some marketing company to do market research for us, then, what are they going to do? They're going to get on the phone, call people, and assess the market based on conversations that they have. And that's what your salespeople should be doing. The salespeople should be bringing back market information so that you, to the best of your ability, can understand where you stand in terms of market penetration in certain areas. Now, the more specific you are, then the easier that's going to be. But then you can set goals based on really expectations for, gaining market share. And then from that point, you could put plans in place to really determine, okay, how will we get there? What resources do we need in terms of people or otherwise? And then you can now also monitor, whether that's actually playing out the way you expected it to, based on the formula that you created, and then determine, what the efficiency is of the resources that we're investing in and the people that we have doing sales related activities, and look for, and then you understand, okay, where do we need to improve? Okay. And then this is where what I do becomes a lot more efficient, because we're identifying where the gaps are. And then now you can invest in training because you're really investing in filling in those gaps. Okay. Or making the changes that you need to make. Right. So, this is really the first step. Okay. You can go to the next slide. So it really the first step in this is, what's your sales strategy? Okay. And the first piece of that is, what is your customer segmentation? So what are the market segments? How are you segmenting your market to a point where, this is actually a strategic plan. And there's a lot of different ways that you could carve up your market. It could be a geographic region, for example, or it could be customer target groups, or it could be areas of expertise based on the products and services that you deliver. Okay, but so for example, for you, Lori, with the fish business, you were working at different geographic region, which is an example of that. Of course, you're strong here in the New England area because that's where you're based. But then there's target groups. So there's all different kinds of customers that you have. You could have distribution companies that you sell to. There's supermarkets. There's and then restaurants. So a different target demographics. And then there's specialties, right? So different types of fish. So, so somebody told me that, haddock, which is really popular here, nobody buys that in the Midwest, right? And so it really depends on so you have specialists that sell particular types of fish because they're experts at it. And so you really have all of that working in your organization. Okay, but then there's target customer groups. So it could be, a lot of times in manufacturing, especially contract manufacturing, they have bits and pieces of customers in all different types of markets. And so, it's really hard to put together a sales strategy if you're selling to, 12 or, even 20 different subcategories of manufacturing. It's almost impossible to put together a strategy based on, that kind of a diverse market approach. Whereas if you figured out where really is your best opportunity, then you can really figure out how to put together a plan. I have a client that makes diffusers and grills, for example, for air conditioning systems. Okay, and we determined that there's two really growth areas for them. But right now, the way they go to market is through distribution companies, because there's HVAC contractors all over the place. So that it lends itself to a distribution model. But their growth areas were in hospitals because through COVID, the regulations changed, the guidelines for ventilation changed in operating rooms. Okay, so they hired a salesperson, and when which also leads itself to a distribution network strategy. But we found out that, not all of their distributors were tied into the hospital market. So, she was working with the existing distributors, but also establishing new relationships. And their biggest growth area was in clean rooms. So clean rooms are really managed in a design build environment with special contractors. So, and there's not that many of them. So they hired another salesperson, and we were working a direct sale environment. So she's setting up these relationships with these design build contractors. And then we find out the third piece, which is the second piece, what's their offering? Well, what those people wanted was a different, more holistic product offering, which they started to develop. And then they differentiate themselves. So they're the only one of two companies in the country who can provide what they want. And so they're now setting themselves up for long-term relationships with that small world to be able to grow. And she basically was doing 3 times her monthly goal in 2 or 3 months because of those relationships she was establishing, and because they were now designing products and service offerings that meet the customer's needs based on that specific market. Okay. Or being a specialist. So once you really define that segmentation, or what are the products and offerings that that particular customer segment needs, now you can define the sales process. What are the activities that your sales team needs to be doing in order to adequately serve that market? And once that's done, now you have the basis for performance. Things that you can define what the measurements are. Okay, you can go to the next slide. Step 2 now is your go-to-market strategy. So now that you've defined your market and what the sales process that's adequate to serve that market, how are you going to, what is your marketing and prospecting plan to address the market? And, a lot of times, like I say, manufacturers go to market through distribution networks. And, and depending on the market, sometimes that's the best approach. And so, again, I don't know how any of you, whether you go to market through distribution partnerships or not, You know, I know that, you know, Lori at Nagel, you do have some distributors that are some of your biggest customers. But you know, if you don't, then, you know, you're adopting a direct sale approach. Okay. And so it really depends on how you're going to market. But for example, I had if you're doing a distribution partnership, a lot of times what happens is you know, that the clients will hire regional sales representatives that now can go out and work with the distribution partners and get a better feel for the market, but also determine, you know, are they really meeting with the right companies? Are they doing what they need to do in order to really gain market share in the geographic area that they're supposed to, or the territory that they're supposed to be managing? And you know, that's what we were finding out in the hospital market, that they weren't. So that means, okay, maybe, you know, in a specific area, we're not really working with the right partnership, because they are either they're meeting with different types of businesses, or they're not selling the right products or meeting with the right people. And then, you know, maybe we need to go and look for someone else to take over that territory. But once you've defined, okay, what are the marketing channels that make sense for this particular market, and what are the prospecting channels that make sense for direct sale, the direct sales approach, and we try to get our clients working 4 active channels, you know, for the sales team, and that they can select based on the market that they're supposed to be addressing, that all tend to work together. And then you find that, okay, there's 1 or 2 that are primarily, you know, your most productive channels, but the others are feeding them and making them more effective. And then your marketing strategy now is a lot more effective, because it's helping to support the prospecting activities that the salespeople are doing. That makes sense? Any questions about this? Comments? You know, feel free to keep yourself unmuted if there's you know, you have questions. So go back one more. Okay, so now step 3. So you've got your market strategy, you've got your go-to-market plan. Now you can design your sales force. So, you know, how many people do you need to really address the market that you decided you're going to you know, work, and then you know, for example, if you were, you know, adopting a distribution network approach, well, then, you know, maybe you just need regional salespeople that are working in those specific regions. Or if you're doing a direct sale approach, then you need to figure out, okay, how many people do you need, and is it what type of people do you need? So are you getting you know, a lot of inbound inquiries? Is what you need really some business development reps to really handle and qualify those inbound opportunities? Or do you need somebody who's doing more outbound reach to generate more lead, to put more opportunities into the funnel? Or do you need more account executives that are basically more experienced in handling a more complex sale process? So, or do you need, in general, do you need hunters, do you need farmers, or do you need account managers? Or do you need specialists that can really sell into a specific environment based on the technical nature of the application, or do you need specialists that are supporting the sales effort, or do you need inside salespeople that are actually taking away some more of the administrative things, like, you know, doing estimating or putting proposals together or managing the you know, the data management. So you can really figure out, okay, what is the structure of the sales team, and then how many people do you need? What's the size? Based on, once you decide the sales process, you know, you can determine, okay, to adequately serve these customers, these are the activities that these salespeople will be needing to do, and how much time are they going to, you know, need to spend doing those things. So then you can determine, okay, how many people do you need based on that allocation of time, and are we adequately serving the customers based on that analysis? And now you've got responsibilities of what they're supposed to be doing and how often, and with whom. That now gives you the basis for measuring performance. Make sense? Questions?
Yeah.
All right, next. Okay, now providing feedback. So that was all basically, you know, the expectations piece. Now, providing feedback. You know, everybody measures sales. You know, if you're bringing in revenue, you have to, because you got to invoice your customers, right? But you know, that's only one element of performance, okay? And you need to be understanding, you know, well, first of all, sales performance is measured in ratios, just like financial performance. And it just boggles my mind that normally, you know, customer relationship management programs don't automatically give us ratios. They're starting to get smarter, but, you know, we really need to be set up to understand how efficient our salespeople are, okay? And so the first ratio was really, you know, what's the average deal size? You know, what is the average customer revenue amount? And, you know, typically in manufacturing, there's a big variety of customers, and you know, you need to really understand, okay, what's our average revenue opportunity with these different customers, and also, you know, how many, usually there's different levels of opportunities. So for example, I have a client that sells pumps, okay, and there's new construction, and then there's aftermarket replacement, okay. In the replacement market, there could be like a small repair, or it could be a large, you know, multi-pump replacement. So there's, you know, I use the baseball analogy. You've got base hits, doubles, and triples. And if these sales reps they don't have in their pipeline a certain number of doubles, triples, and singles, they're never going to make their goal. So they've got to really be tracking, you know, and always be looking at, okay, who is it that, you know, is going to represent those bigger opportunities, okay? And, you know, when I first started working with them on the aftermarket side, there were three salespeople, okay, and there were the top producers. Well, there was a top producer, and then there was what they called the bull in the china shop, and then there was a person that was only expected to bring in half of the top producer. So when you look at exemplary performance divided by average, there's a factor of 2, meaning that lower level person had the opportunity to double their performance. Okay. And that's why they hired me, because that person wasn't actually meeting that 50% goal. And they weren't breaking even on. Okay. The bull in the china shop now is a top producer. So now they have 2 top producers. Okay. And that other person is still with them. But now his PIP is 1.49. So he's doing a lot better, but and then they have another new person whose PIP is 1.83. Okay. However, the 2 top producers now are doing 229% more than they were before. Okay. So that the target, the top exemplary performance number is more than 200% more than it was before. And the people who were average performers now are coming closer to exemplary performance. They're not top producers for various reasons, but we're always working on trying to get them closer to top performance because we know where the gaps are. Okay. Now, you might ask, okay, why is it that they're able to do more than double what they were before? The same number of people. Because now because it's that dollar per sale, the dollar per sale number and the close rate. Because what they were doing and with whom, we've made that more effective and efficient. Okay, making sure that they're dealing with people that have the opportunity to be those higher ticket items, making sure that they're giving proposals to people who can make the decision, not people who have to go to somebody else, and then establishing relationships at a higher level so that they're lined up with opportunities on an ongoing basis and not wasting their time with stuff that is of lower value or never going to happen. That's how they've now tripled their production with the same number of people. Okay, so we've got to not just measure sales results. You got to measure, the average sale. Got to measure what's your proposal close rate. Measure how many first opportunities you need to produce in order to close a deal. How many contacts is it taking to get a first meeting? And then if you're doing more cold outreach, then you've got to know, you've got to measure your connection rate, and then track your leads and your lead conversion ratios. Questions about this?
We're gonna have to. It's already 12:52.
Okay.
So I don't know if you want to talk about this, or we still have like 3 or 4 more slides and we're pretty much out of time.
All right. Well, I could just talk about this really quick. When keep going.
Okay.
When knowing what real performance is, performance and results and activities are really usually the opportunity for coaching. And coaching is really where you deliver and receive feedback. Okay. And if you're utilizing feedback effectively, then normally you present what behaviors maybe you're observing or results that you're observing, the impact on people and results. And then the question is, okay, you have a conversation. You need to be on the same page as to what perceptions the coachee has that you have. Are you on the same page? Once you are, then the question is, what do you think we should do about it? Okay, when you do that, most of the time they'll come up through a conversation of ongoing learning questions and listening actively with a plan. And then 60% of the time, 20% of the time, then maybe you can offer some advice. Okay, that makes sense. You may also want to consider. So when you think about it, 80% of the time, a really productive coaching conversation, they should come up with their own solutions. 15% of the time, you say, well, this is what I need you to do. And the only reason I want to bring this up is because normally that's where we go. I need you to do this. Here's what you should do. Okay. When we're missing the 80% opportunity for them to create their own plan. And then only 5% of the time, it's like, look, if you don't do this, this is the consequence. Okay. So that's the really basis for that slide. Okay. Next.
Okay. So we just wanted to remind you that this is a 7-series workshop. We did the first workshop last month. This is the second workshop today, the third workshop where we're going to talk about tools, systems, and resources to support top performance is October 9th, and you'll be receiving a registration link after this workshop to sign up. And then we have once a month workshops through February 12th on each of the keys. And then we would love your feedback. We have a few questions to answer on Mentimeter. What is one key thing you learned that you plan to apply to your job, your team, your organization? And if you lost the QR code, you can just go to menti.com and enter the code at the top. Okay, we have one response accountability, which is super important because you can have all the expectations you want, but if there's no accountability for meeting them, then so 2 people set accountability, targeted goals, and feedback. Excellent. So the second question is, what is one thing you liked, you wished we could have done more or less of, or you're still wondering about? If no one has anything here, I'll go to the next question. Is there another topic you would like to learn more about? Okay, we're going to talk about incentives and consequences in the next workshop in October. Sorry, not in the next one, we're talking about tools and resources and systems. So some of these topics we're gonna hit at the next workshop, and then the workshop in November, we're gonna talk about incentives and consequences. Ken, do you have any other thoughts or
Yeah, so
comments?
that in November, we'll be talking about incentives, but in terms of segmenting customers and and that, I'd be happy to talk to anybody, whoever put that in there, and brainstorm that with you, one-to-one. And same thing with picking channels. Close rates that really depends on the sales process. So, that really depends on how you're going to market your sales process and conducting those sales meetings. But picking channels and prospecting, I don't know what prospect means, but I assume that's picking channels to prospect. Again, we can talk about that. If anybody has any real specific questions, maybe we have a minute or so to respond to questions on those topics.
Yeah, well, that is the end of our time together, and we really appreciate you joining. Ken will be sending out a link to our next workshop on this topic, which will cover tools, resources, and systems to optimize performance. Here's our contact information. And like Ken said, we're both available to stick around for a few minutes if anyone would like to chat with us about any of the topics covered or any other questions.